We are going to fix our inner cities and rebuild our highways, bridges, tunnels, airports, schools, hospitals. We're going to rebuild our infrastructure.
President-elect Trump laying out some of his priorities in his victory speech early Wednesday morning. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Syndicated columnist George Will, Charles Lane from the Washington Post, Julie Pace, who covers the White House and the transition for the Associated Press, and Ben Domenech, co-founder of the web magazine The Federalist. Well, since the election, Mr. Trump has been espousing a pretty standard conservative agenda. He's been reaching out to establishment Republicans, even including Mitt Romney, who spent the entire campaign bashing him. George, as a Trump doubter, are you at all reassured?
Yes, not least of all what was said 20 minutes ago by Kellyanne Conway. She said, you can't appoint novices. Well, we just elected one, which is fine, and he seems to realize inevitably that he sits atop an enormous Republican Party infrastructure. He has 4,000 policy-making jobs to fill, and they are going to come from the pool of the Republican Party, which is thoroughly conservative, and from the intellectual infrastructure of the Republican Party, AEI, other think tanks, Heritage Foundation, et cetera. And these are people who know what the swamp looks like that he wants to drain. For example, the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education, which has been harassing colleges and universities without any legal warrant. Furthermore, he does seem to be committed to the list of judges for the Supreme Court and for the rest of the federal judiciary. Since 1971, when Nixon finally tipped the balance of the Supreme Court, 1971, there's been a conservative majority on the court. There'll be a conservative majority for at least 25 more years. Final bit of evidence. Jeb Hensarling being talked about as Treasury Secretary. Establishment Republican.
Head of the Financial Services Committee.
Congressman from Dallas, wonderful man, talented, who's already thought through that Fannie and Freddie ought to go, things like this, genuine radicalism. The one thing that I think indicates the limits of this, and you just brought it up, is term limits. You really want to put the fox among the chickens in this town, advocate term limits. I think he'll pull back from that.
Because that means the lobbyists take over, the permanent Washington takes over from the elected members of Congress. Ben, let's talk about the flip side. And I'm sure some people that are Trump supporters are getting heartburn that George Will is feeling so happy about this. After all his talk about shaking up Washington and draining the swamp, are you worried that he may not be as much of a disruptor as he portrayed himself?
No, I do think he will be a disruptor, but I think it's going to be in a lot of ways that are unpredictable, fitting with the approach that he's had since he got into this. There is really a question about how many of these internal congressional established members who've been around for quite some time are going to be part of his cabinet, part of his approach. But the fact simply is that Donald Trump has promised the American people a dramatic number of things, a number of different major changes in policy and in the way that Washington works. In order to achieve that, he's going to need more than just, as George mentioned, novices along the lines of people who haven't had experience in the past dealing with policy. It's just a question of whether any of that is going to lead to a softening when it comes to the types of promises that he's delivered to the people. I don't really think that Trump, though, as someone attitudinally, inclined to engage in this type of promise to the American people, is anyone who wants to back off of those things. I think he wants to deliver, and I think that that's why you're going to see a lot of people who come in who, even if they may have some significant degree of experience, they may have a long tenure in this town, they also are going to be people who are going to fit in terms of their approach to a dramatic level of reform, a dramatic level of change.
One of the most striking images this week, I think we'll all agree, was Donald Trump and Barack Obama meeting together, talking together in the Oval Office. They said all the right things about a smooth transition, but let's remember what Mr. Obama said about Mr. Trump on the campaign trail.
I will consider it a personal insult, an insult to my legacy, if this community lets down its guard and fails to activate itself in this election.
Julie, what do your sources tell you about what really went on in that meeting? Does Mr. Obama really think that he made any inroads in persuading Donald Trump, or does he basically think Trump meant when he said he was going to blow up the Obama legacy?
I think they don't know exactly what the outcome of that meeting will be. I do think that Obama, he said this publicly, that he feels encouraged by the fact that Trump has said he wants to at least work with the president's team for this transition period. This is such a massive process that is going to get underway right now. And I think that the Trump team would be smart to lean on people who have experience doing it, both in previous Republican administrations, but also in the current administration. I think that both men are saying all of the right things.
But in terms of policy, did Mr. Obama think he made any headway? And this is going to give a lot of Trump supporters
I don't think
heartburn.
he knows yet. I think that if you look at some of the things that Trump has said about Obamacare in the last few days, including in the Wall Street Journal interview, he did say he would take under advisement some of the things that that Obama said during that meeting. But we have now 4 years where we'll be able to have a much clearer picture than what has happened over the last couple of days.
I got to say, though, I think that the mainstream media has gotten this one wrong in the sense that when Trump talks about keeping pre-existing conditions or keeping the idea that parents can keep their kids on their insurance till age 26, that's been part of Republican policy for years in terms of reforming Obamacare. That is not a change.
It's not a change, and he's talked about some of those things during the course of the campaign as well. I think it was striking, though, to hear him say that he heard what the president said and would take that under advisement.
We ask you for questions for the panel, and we got a bunch about this question of which Trump we will see as president. James Camerata sent this on Facebook. How will Donald Trump balance his brash and direct style, which many find refreshing, with the discipline required of a president? Chuck, any idea how to answer, James, about which Trump we're going to see?
I would put it this way. The only person at this point who can defeat Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He is the one who has it within his power, really just through his behavior and temperament, to make or break this crucial 6-month period here. And we've had conflicting signals. We've seen him give a very statesmanlike speech after he was elected, and we've seen him conduct himself with great dignity in the White House. And then we have, thank you, Julie, last night his tweet, wow, the New York Times is losing thousands of subscribers because of their very poor, highly inaccurate coverage of the Trump phenomenon. We also had a somewhat provocative tweet he put out with respect to protesters. He has said, oh, I will be restrained with Twitter. This is the imponderable.
You sure that isn't a bad thing for him to take a shot at the New York Times?
Politically, I'm sure it makes his folks feel great. I'm sure it makes him feel great. Here's what I'm driving at. The world is full of surprises, and very often they come in the foreign policy arena for the first 6 months of a new president. His ability to control this side of himself in such a crisis, if it comes, will have a lot to do with just about everything else he's trying to achieve.
All right. We have to take a break here.